Fighters of the 210th Separate Assault Battalion of the Armed Forces of Ukraine have neutralized a Russian sabotage and reconnaissance group that attempted to enter one of the settlements in the Zaporizhzhia region. Some of the occupiers, who were moving in small groups and trying to take positions in residential buildings, were destroyed using kamikaze drones. Ukrainian fighters later threw hand grenades into basements where the occupiers might have been hiding and fully took control of the area. Russian sabotage groups were indeed recorded in Pokrovsk, Donetsk Oblast. Of the approximately 150 occupiers who headed towards the city, only about 30 were able to get there, analysts from the Deep State Project reported. According to them, the occupiers formed 3 tactical groups of about 50 people each. Their task was to destabilize the situation, sow panic among residents and force Ukrainian units to leave the city, similar to the events in Seladov. The route from Seladovo to Pokrovsk, according to deep state estimates, took the Russian military 14 days. They spent 4 days getting to the industrial zone in Peskinoy, and another 10 to get from Peskinoy to Zashchitnikov Ukraini Street in Pokrovsk. Thus, the enemy's daily progress was about 600 meters, which was probably due to the desire to avoid detection. Deep State said Russian sabotage groups received communications, water, and food via drone drops, which ensured proper coordination between units and awareness of each other's locations. To disguise themselves, the occupiers used special cloaks and hid in random shelters. In addition, they were equipped with trackers to track their routes. About 120 people out of 150 died from the drops, perhaps some managed to survive after being wounded. On July 19, groups began to gather in Pokrovsk and carry out sabotage actions. The search for the remnants of the groups has been ongoing all this time. This week, another part of the saboteurs surrendered, the report says. Deep State noted that the occupiers did not achieve their goal, although they created many difficulties for the Ukrainian defense forces. Analysts noted that it is difficult to call a plan successful that assumed that 80% of the personnel would die while advancing to the mission site. On August 9, the representative of the OSGV Dnepr Viktor Tregibov stated that the situation in the Pokrovsk direction is the most difficult in the last year. According to him, it is now more difficult there than in any previous period, because the Russians abandoned a huge crowd of people. Earlier, the Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, Oleksandr Syrsky, called the situation in Pokrovsk, Donetsk region, threatening, since powerful groups of the Russian army are currently located there. Russian occupation forces began to massively transfer personnel, more than 30 trucks with ammunition, tanks, and fuel tankers to the Zaporizhzhia direction. In total, 25 lowboys with tanks and other types of armored vehicles were recorded, noted the head of the Center for the Study of the Occupation, Petro Andriashenko, in his Telegram channel.
Russian forces have seen a notable rise in losses of older T-62 tanks in Ukraine, even as the overall number of destroyed armored vehicles continues to decline. According to military analyst Richard Verica on X, an analysis based on visually confirmed data from warspotting.net indicates a sustained drop in total Russian tank losses, with the trend becoming particularly pronounced in June and July 2025. At the same time, the share of destroyed T-62s has grown significantly, Between March and July, losses of this model increased 2.5 times, suggesting their more frequent deployment to front-line positions. Verica notes that Russia appears to be withdrawing newer tanks, such as the T-80, into reserve units to preserve them, reflected in the sharp decline in losses of these models. Since the start of the full-scale invasion, Russia has lost 3,545 tanks as of July 2025, according to Richard Verica. Losses in recent months have been among the lowest recorded, 19 in June and 25 in July, compared to 70 in February, 68 in March, 60 in April and 31 in May. Preliminary August figures show only 2 tanks lost so far. T-72 tanks account for the largest share of overall losses, with 1,529 destroyed, followed by T-80s with 1,113, T-62s with 274 and T-90s with 168. According to the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, Russia has lost approximately 11,089 tanks since the start of the full-scale invasion on February the 24th, 2022, as of August the 10th, 2025. Earlier, OSINT analysis showed Russia retrieving Cold War-era T-72A and T-72 Ural tanks, many in poor condition, from long-term storage as stocks of modern armor run low, underscoring the scale of battlefield losses and the strain on its defense industry. Forbes recently reported that in some sectors of the front, Ukrainian forces now have a tank advantage. This success is due to trained combat teams equipped with various drones capable of mining terrain or directly striking armored vehicles. As a result, Russian tanks have become vulnerable. Many fail to even reach the front lines, forced instead to operate from the rear as makeshift, imprecise artillery. During nearly 3 years of its full-scale war against Ukraine, Russia has lost over more than 10,000 tanks, Ukraine's General Staff reported. Facing these losses, Russia has resorted to refurbishing old stockpiles, even deploying antiquated T-55 tanks, first introduced in 1958, and sometimes even older models. Enormous reserves in Siberia have become a patchwork donor base, with mechanics cobbling together functional tanks from multiple derelict ones. Combined with intensive production efforts, Russia has managed to deliver up to 100 tanks per month to the front lines. However, even this pace fails to provide a decisive advantage.